Hello and a very warm welcome to you. This is You.Gov and it's all about you and the government. I always like to tell you that it's about you and the government. We talk about government functions and responsibilities, policies of government, as well as your obligations as a citizen. Yes, you have a role to play in the growth and development of your country. I always like to tell you that too. I am Olomu-Agbodo. We'll go on a quick break. We'll be right back. This week on Edibox, we are taking a look at civic rights. Civic rights are the rights which are necessary for an individual to live a happy, contented, and progressive life in a society. Some of these rights include political rights like right to vote, right to be elected, right to hold public offices, right to petition, right to permanent residence, right to resist. This is a controversial right. Some believe that citizens should be given the right to resist an unjust government, while others assert that government will become a plaything in the hands of the people if this right is freely exercised. According to Mahatma Gandhi, however, people should be given the right to resist a bad government. Some other types of rights are right to own property, right to contract, right to work, right to rest and leisure. These are some economic rights. More to come on the show.
Now on StarTimes Channel 465 is your #1 Christian and lifestyle channel, Love World Plus, meeting all your entertainment needs. Trending, dedications, joyride, celebrity lounge, video tales, and so much more. For those of you who love current affairs, we've got you covered. News focus, strictly politics, the agenda, You.Gov, and so on. Be sure to always be in the know with our informative programs, as we also get you settled with amazing documentaries like A Day in Your Neighborhood, Discover Africa. These will blow your mind. The youths and kids are not left out, as we have created a platform for them to speak, learn, and have fun. And to crown it all, we serve fresh, hot, and sizzling foods to feed your spirit, soul, and body. That is Pastor's programs. There's never a dull moment with us. So make it a date on Channel 465 as we take you on a smooth journey to cater to all your needs. Love World Plus, Channel 465 on StarTimes.
You're welcome back if you just joined us. This is You.Gov, and we've been talking about the state of the nation, national security, and issues like that on the show. But before then, we talked about civic responsibilities, listing out your obligations, the roles you have to play in the development of your society. But now we're taking a detour. We're going back to our discussion on civic rights and civic responsibility. But our focus this week is on civic rights. What are your rights? You'll get to be finding out on the show, but want to go on the street to find out how well Nigerians know their rights. Take a listen.
Well, my basic right as a Nigerian citizen is I should be entitled to have good electricity. As in basic infrastructures like electricity, good road, good water, then those are the basic things that as a good citizen of a good nation, those are the things I'm entitled to. The government should do what it's supposed, what they ought to do in terms of providing the basic infrastructures that can actually help people to be a citizen of this country, so that people will not be traveling out of the country in and out. People traveling out is just for the basic things that they get there. But here, the reverse is the case.
As a citizen, basic rights, good roads, good infrastructure, energy, fundamental rights of justice and social welfare. Talking about social welfare, talk about better welfare package, talk about good emoluments, good remuneration in terms of work and all that. There are a whole lot.
Good roads, amenities, lights, electricity, a whole lot of things. For instance, Badagry Road. I live in Badagry. The road is very bad. I'm thinking of how to get home right now.
Quite interesting. A lot of people on the streets, interestingly, know about their rights. They know what they expect of the government. Do you know your rights? Well, we have Evans Ufeli standing by to tell us about the rights of citizens in their country. What are your rights? We have political rights, we have economic rights. He'll be telling us more. Take a listen.
Civic rights are usually the rights bestowed on citizens, or the kind of activities they are supposed to exhibit in line with the national integrity or the national authority of a state. You have several of them. Civic rights is your right to vote, okay, and then the right to be voted for. Okay, right to hold public opinion. You have a right to exercise sanitation, right to exercise business activity, right to go about different kinds of activity. We all have such kind of rights. They are civic rights generally. Yeah, like the right to vote. Okay, it is fundamental because it was through the process of voting that the leadership of the country is obtained from the local council level, where you are either voting for the councillor or you are voting for the chairman of your local government, because everybody resides in a local government. 774 local government, everybody, whatever location you find yourself, you fall within any of the local governments. So at every level, we have leadership at the local government level, at the state level, and then so the only way you can participate in choosing and deciding who leads you is to exercise that civic responsibility to vote. Okay, and then if you are of age, you can also take it further to also ask to be voted for. And that is the two sides of it. That is, if you are above 18, okay, you are not an adult, you can vote. Okay, but at that level, you cannot be voted for because you need to acquire a certain level of, like governorship is 35, to be a president is 40, then you have other cadres. Okay, you need to acquire that. But the most important thing is that first, you have the right to vote when you are of age. Then second, you have the right also to be voted for as well. That is established. Then we also have the right to observe the national anthem. It's also a civic responsibility. Okay, a civic right to observe the national anthem. Also talk about the national ethics, like section 23 of the Constitution talk about the national ethics of the Nigerian state, okay, which is supposed to be the vision, okay, of the state, the dream of the Nigerian state. We also have the right to work, okay. When I say the right to work, it's all encompassing. It could mean You have a right to apply to be employed either by the state government, the local government, or the federal government. You also have a right to apply to work in a private firm or a private company. You also have the right to own and establish businesses and employ people. Okay, those are the two basic ways. And that right is important to exercise it because it goes along to define our economic status as individuals, then by extension, the economic status of the state that where we reside. And in doing that, people get employed. And then we should also understand that there's a part I have to bring into this. It's important that where you employ more than 2 persons, the law says you must have what we call a retirement benefit for them, like a kind of pension scheme where you deduct, every month you deduct certain percentages. Now it is 8 and 10. You deduct 10% from the company, you deduct 8% from the employer, and you have 18% as the tax, which you remit to any of the tax administrators for the purposes of. So that is for work. Then you also have the right to own property in any location in Nigeria. That is in section 42 or 43 of the Constitution, thereabout. And 1999 Constitution as amended, you have the right to own property anywhere in the country. Nobody have that right to restrict you or restrain you from owning property anywhere. And emphasizing that the reason we have that in Constitution is to foster integration, so that people can go to, because it is a country that is promoting unity, oneness. This, after the Civil War, that became a serious issue for which, and then it has also created a lot of programs along the line. But it's important we know that you have a right to own property anywhere in Nigeria, and you have a right also to reside anywhere in Nigeria. Okay, you can choose not to reside in your state of origin. You can choose to reside in another state. It also applies to the question of work and business. You can choose to do business anywhere in the country. You can choose to work anywhere in the country where you derive satisfaction. And then, most importantly, we also have the civic responsibility to maintain law and order. That is very key. To maintain law and order is fundamental. And then it is a responsibility that every individual must exercise. Because when we exercise it, then we can foster peace and security. Then you can have prosperity. In the absence of peace and security, and then law-abiding citizens, you'll find it difficult to have peace. So that is it. Well, they are not absolutely the same, but there are times where they overlap. You understand? Like if you look at the fundamental human rights, first of all, from section 33, you talk about the right to life. I mean, that really captures everything we're talking about. You need to be alive to be able to work, to own property, to exercise your right to vote and be voted for, to whatever, be law-abiding and all that. So at that point, you can see it overlapping. Okay, you can see it overlapping. But there are other areas where you can actually distinguish it. Okay, and that might be in the area of right to freedom of speech, right to personal liberty. Okay, and then right not to be subjected into dehumanizing condition, like servitude and all that. Those are actually fundamental rights. So I think the difference mainly is that fundamental rights are codified. Civic rights are not necessarily codified, like they are obligations. They are not. It overlaps because civic rights are general citizens' obligation. What citizens ought to do, what they ought not to do. But when you look at the fundamental right is graphic. in the Constitution, it is sectionalized. And then when you go through the Constitution from chapter 4 down, you will find all the rights resident. You see how we talk about the issue of even it went as far as placing some professional responsibilities on some authorities and all that. But the most important thing here is that in one way we can say a civic right overlaps with fundamental right. In another way, we could say that fundamental right will also be distinguished from civic right because they are actually codified in the Constitution and they are very graphic in nature. Yes, citizens can enforce these rights. Okay, how can they do it? First of all, we look at the right to vote and the right to be voted for. Okay, where there is a kind of abuse of the process. Okay, where there's an abuse of the process, any of the rights, whether it's fundamental, whether it's civic, okay, once there's an abuse, the law in section 46 of the Constitution have said that whenever these rights are abused, you can bring an action to get it enforced either in the state high court or the federal high court. Okay, that is the foundation. Okay, that's what the law says. But it's not in all instances that you rush to court. There are instances where you need to just do a petition to the police to intervene. Okay, there are instances where you need to call the attention of the relevant authority. If it's a traffic contravention, okay, you may need to call the road safety for intervention. If it is something that has to do with security threat to life and all that, violations of this fundamental of this civic rights, you can get onto the police force. But it is not in all cases, is what I mean, that you can enforce your right through the court process. But the Constitution has laid it down that if any of these rights are violated, it didn't even say violated only. If there is a tendency, if there's a premonition that it will or it might or it is being, violated, you can actually go to court to enforce it. Then where you do not want to go to court, maybe based on the nature of the case, you can approach the police force. For the case of labor, that's the right to work, and then the right to employ citizens. Where there's a violation, okay, you are supposed to go to the National Industrial Court for enforcement, because I talked about it. There are a lot of places where people work where they are casualized. Casualization is an offense. It's one of the offenses, the civic responsibility, one of the violations which requires national enforcement. You have Lebanese, you have Chinese, you have Indians in Nigeria. They employ Nigerian citizens. They don't confirm them as staff, and then they don't even issue them employment letter and then terms of employment. They keep them casualized for as long as they work, and that is an offense. 2, they don't put them under any pension scheme. That is a serious and gross violation. Okay, the government must intervene. But the people should not just wait for government. The citizens of Nigeria, that is a common contravention, that the citizens must, as a matter of necessity, enforce, use the appropriate authority to enforce. So it's enforceable. These civic responsibilities, they are all enforceable.
Well, that's been Evans Ufeli, a legal practitioner based in Nigeria, talking about civic rights. And he also mentioned the fact that the civic rights, some of them overlap with fundamental rights. Some of your rights as a citizen, they are just like your fundamental rights and are upheld by the constitution of the nation that you belong to. And now in Nigeria, under the 1999 constitution, we have rights listed out in chapter 4 of that constitution. And some of these rights are just your civic rights. In chapter 2, we also have some rights listed there too. Those rights, some of them you cannot even go to courts to enforce those rights, but they are still your rights. We'll go on a quick break. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. We still have Evans Ufeli, who is going to be talking about how well the government has fared in terms of upholding the rights of her citizens. Take a listen.
Well, the civic rights of Nigerians has not been upheld by the government, because the government itself is also a culprit here. The government have consistently violated the rights of Nigerians. So the government have not been able to provide social security welfare scheme for the citizens as stated in the Constitution. So when we take it up from there, it's difficult to. There are areas where government have, created some social security scheme, but it's not effective. When you give people 5,000 naira and all that, and then you place them under some kind of condition that does not really reflect what it ought to be. Just like there are countries I know where to work per hour, there's a minimum wage per hour. In the US, there's a minimum wage per hour. That's being serious about enforcing the welfare of the citizens. That is why many countries that produce goods for the United States cannot bring their factory to the United States because of the high cost of labor. The citizens will not be subjected to cheap labor. So that is an example. Perhaps the federal government, since we copy from America, perhaps the federal government should copy that, okay, and then make sure that they're able to instruct and monitor the investors who have businesses here and they don't treat workers very well. That's a serious violation. Government will act in that direction through the office of the Minister of Labor and Productivity. That is a fundamental issue, because employment plays a very fundamental role in the social, economic lifestyle of the people. It reflects and shows a lot. Okay, and government internally must also expunge its own abuse of the citizens. Well, my advice, or rather recommendation, is that the Nigerian citizens, they must all endeavor to exercise their civic rights, which we have talked about. It is for the promotion of a better society that we yearn for. This right exists for the purposes of defining society and then making society better, okay? Why the fundamental rights are also there as inalienable rights that will guarantee the freedom right that will guarantee social and economic justice. So my advice is that we should, as much as possible, be law-abiding, okay? Be law-abiding. We must respect the institutions of government, okay? That's the institutions of government. We must also contribute our quota to the development of the country. You see, because government alone cannot fix the country. We contribute our quota. How do we contribute our quota? By paying our tax regularly, okay? By participating in election and electioneering process, okay? By making sure and ensuring that we acquire education, okay? And then by making sure that society is placed on that scale where everyone will have a sense of belonging.
Well, that was Ufeli talking about the role the government should play in terms of upholding the rights of citizens and citizens' welfare. We are calling on the government to do more in terms of fixing the roads, fixing institutions of state, and giving them the power to actually carry out the functions that they were set up to carry out. Things like education, hospitals, these things are essential to the welfare of human beings, because civic rights essentially are things that help citizens to live a happy life. These things should be fundamental. They should be enforceable even in the court of law. So we are calling on the government to do their bit in helping the citizens to enjoy better lives in the society. But still ahead, we have our tidbits. Well, that's the much we can take this week on You.Gov. We talked about civic rights, and we've talked about civic obligations before. Listing out your functions to pay tax, your functions to actually ensure that your environment is kept clean, to protect or ensure that the facilities that the government puts in place are well taken care of. Those are your general functions as a citizen. But you also have a right. You have a right to good roads. You have a right to good medical facilities, good health care, good education. These are rights that you are entitled to. We would like to hear from you. If you'd like you to log on to our website on www.loverplus.tv or send comments to the number that will be showing on your screen now. You can also reach us on info@loverplus.org. I am Itohan Olomu-Agbodo. Bye for now.